Hello, my friends. Long time no talk. I have been busy. I hope you have been too. Today, I thought I would take the opportunity to share something that's not a sweater. I know, pretty crazy for the sweater with Kathleen names, right? But every once in a while, I do like knitting an accessory. Most of the time I am knitting sweaters, as you know, but today I wanted to share with you the Blossom or the Bole, my new shawl design inspired by the poem Among School Children by William Butler Yeats. It is what's called an asymmetrical triangle shawl. So you begin way up here, at this point, you begin up here at this point with just a few stitches and you increase only every other row. So you are creating this row of eyelets along the top, and as you keep going you've got more and more stitches to work. You are going to do garter stripes in two colors and then leaf lace in one of those two colors. Then when you feel like you've done kind of enough of the lace, you are going to shift to your third color and this beautiful bird's eye mesh pattern, which is worked on both sides. It's very easy though, I promise. The second side is basically garter stitch, except you have to deal with a double yarn over, at which point you knit and purl into the same stitch. It's all explained in the pattern. All the stitch patterns are charted. The garter stripes are not. Figure you can do that yourself. After a big section of bird's eye mesh, we've got a little bit more garter stripes, and then we finish off with a simple yet perfect picot border. It's a picot bind off, so it's really fun to do, and it creates this little lacy edging to it. And it's this big beautiful shawl. I have been wearing mine all spring. I took it to Paris. I wear it around New York, and I really just love it. And I do wear it like this, all jumbled up around my neck. It is really cozy, but at the same time, because it's fingering weight yarn and it's got this lace, it's not too hot. So it's a great transitional weather piece to have. You can wrap it up, you can throw it over your shoulder, you can wear it just like a big graceful shawl, or like I do and Jane does, wear it just bandit style wrapped around your neck. It's really easy, I promise. It's a lot of fun. All of my testers have said how quick it is, which is surprising because you are using about 1,000 yards of fingering weight yarn. Yep, it is not a small shawl, which is usually the way I like to design shawls. I usually make little ones that I can tuck up around my neck and wear all the time. But I felt like doing a big one, and here it is. I used 2 skeins of Backyard Fiberworks Prairie, which is their single ply fingering weight yarn, in cast iron, which is the black, and our Bole, which is this lovely rich green. And then I used a skein of hedgehog fibers. It's this crazy variegated, this is a potluck, but in the pattern I specify an actual colorway from hedgehog because it's very close to this, but obviously she does some potlucks to test things out, and then she does a colorway. So I believe that is called Daydream. But really any 3 colors that you like. Some of my testers have done very subtle, close to each other colorways, and it makes a really beautiful textural shawl that focuses more on the texture. And then some of them have done 3 really strong different colors, like a really light, a really dark, and a middle color, and that is dramatic too in a different way. So whatever 3 skeins speak to you, put them together, look at them, think about them a little. I originally was going to use this crazy baby pink here where I've used the purple Daydream, and the pink was too babyish with the green, I guess, but it was definitely not the right combo, and it didn't take too long to figure that out. So pardon my phone, I forgot to turn off the ringer. So really any 3 colors. Let me know if you have color combos that you're thinking of. Post them on Instagram. I'm at Kathleen Names over there. Tag it, Blossom or Bole, and I will be happy to help you choose. So go stash diving, go to the yarn store. if you are watching this as soon as it was released, I will be at Brooklyn General on Sunday, along with the shawl, along with printed copies of the pattern. Brooklyn General is part of the Brooklyn Yarn Crawl. NYC Yarn Crawl has organized a spring crawl in Brooklyn, and I'm very excited. I don't get to Brooklyn very often. I live way, way, way uptown on Manhattan, and so getting to Brooklyn is it takes almost an hour to get there for me. So it's something I have to like plan to do. So I was thrilled that Kat invited me to come to the shop. I'll get to meet a bunch of Brooklyn knitters, some of whom I'm sure I know already, others of whom I am really looking forward to meeting you and being in Kat's beautiful shop. If you haven't been to Brooklyn General yet, I highly recommend it. I know the other Brooklyn yarn stores are great too, no offense, but I am excited to be at Kat's shop on Sunday. So otherwise, you can of course purchase your copy online on Ravelry, and I have a coupon code for 20% off Blossom20 at checkout. Use that code, and it's good through the end of April so that you can get started on your new favorite spring shawl right away. So a while back, I asked my newsletter subscribers, many of whom you are, I hope. If you haven't, go and sign up for the sweater newsletter at KathleenDames.com. But I asked what kind of sweater people would like to do next. And I got some interesting answers. Some people were interested in things like top down or sweaters in pieces. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm not I'm not the designer for that. I really have found bottom-up seamless sweater designs work for me, and I enjoy knitting them, I enjoy finishing them, and I find that if I need to make changes, usually the yoke is where I need to make changes, and I'd rather just pull back the yoke a little bit and redo it if necessary, rather than doing it top down and having to start the whole thing all over again, because I don't feel like you can tell. For me, I can't tell if it's fitting when I just put on the yoke of a sweater if I do it top down. So that's how I feel about that. And knitting sweaters in pieces, I know a lot of people like it. There's a whole philosophy about that, and it's great, and it definitely works for a lot of people. I don't enjoy it as much, so that's why I don't do it. There are plenty of great sweaters knit in pieces out there and seamed up, and I don't mind seaming, but I would rather do other things. I would rather be knitting, to be honest. And I also find that knitting a sweater in pieces doesn't take advantage of the flexibility of knitted fabric that knitting in the round does. So that's just my philosophy on that. So I'm still trying to decide what sweater to knit with you all next. And so in the meantime, I may do some more intro of patterns or collections, but I also was thinking of talking just more in general about knitting and about patterns and about being a brave knitter and being the boss of your knitting. So if you have questions, just general questions about knitting, or if you have things that you think, if there are things that you think about knitting, like you have to do it a certain way, let me know. Share those things with me because I want to talk about them. I was hanging out with my friend Alice, and she was working on a pattern, and she was asking me if I had, I was meeting up with her, and if I could bring a needle for her to borrow. She needed a certain size and a certain length. And I said, well, why do you need that? And she said, well, the pattern says I need it for the neck. And I said, well, what size needle, what length needle are you using now? Well, it's the same needle size, and it was a longer length. And I said, well, why don't you just magic loop it? Or, you know, I think just magic loop with a longer needle is a great way to do things. And she said, but the pattern says that I need this second needle size. And I realized the way I write my patterns, I'm sure for a lot of knitters, it seems like this is what you have to do. And so I'm working on including those sort of options that you have as knitters. You can do small circumferences with DPNs, you can do it magic loop, you can do it with the exact needle length, always shorter than the actual circumference. You can do it with 2 needles. There are lots of different ways. Knitting is one of those great flexible things where there are multiple ways to solve the problem of how to knit the neckline. So it helps me to hear what's hard for you or what you think you have to do, because maybe you don't, and we can talk about that. So feel free to send me an email. You can reply to a newsletter. You can leave comments below here on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the places, and pretty much all the places I'm Kathleen Dames. On Ravelry, you can find me that way, but also my username is Pearly, and feel free to DM me. I'm always happy to talk about knitting. Okay, so I'm always happy to talk about the different ways we can do things, and about making knitting your own, because really you are the boss of your knitting. You're in charge. You don't like that neckline, you can change it. That's the beauty of knitting your own things. You don't like doing picot bind off? I know, there are people who don't. I like it. I think it's really flexible and pretty, but it's not always the right thing. But if you don't like it here, change it. You could do an I-cord bind off. You could do a sideways garter bind off. You could add a really pretty lace edging. You are the boss. So make it your own and be happy and love your knitting. That's like, if you haven't gotten that from everything I've done so far on the Sweater with Kathleen Dames, I've been doing it wrong. Because what I want you to do is love your knitting, love what you're making, love wearing it, love showing it off, be proud of what you've done. Because it's a lot of hard work, countless hours, thousands of stitches, and so you should be really proud and happy with it at the end. If you're not, well, let's figure out how to make it better so you are. So that's really my message today. That, and always double check or go with your gut as to what needles you need when you're knitting a pattern. You don't need a 16-inch, a 9-inch, a 24-inch, a 40-inch. Like, you can get by with just a 40-inch needle. I do it all the time. I may specify that you should use DPNs for your sleeves, but most of the time, to be honest, I'm magic looping it, because I just would rather have the one needle. I don't lose track of it. It's the one needle in the project. So that is what I recommend. I have started including language to tell you that you can use whatever method you like for small circumference, and you should do that. And that goes the same for the neck. I mean, it's generally, you're not getting smaller than like 16 inches at the neck, but it's just so much easier to do with magic loop. And then you only have the one needle, and it's harder to lose and harder to forget what needle size you're using and all that stuff. And it's harder to accidentally choose the wrong size needle when you're choosing a different length. It's the consistency of using the same needle through the whole thing. I've gone off on this total tangent, haven't I? I'm sorry. I was really here to tell you about the knot sweater shawl, the blossom of the Bole. So you got a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of tough love, and a little bit of shawl. I hope you are enjoying your knitting and that you're proud of it and that you love it, and that you will come back real soon and we'll talk more about knitting. Be sure to ask me questions. You can, like, don't think anything is a silly question or a dumb question. It's not. There's just always so much more to learn. And the more you ask me about stuff, the more I can help you and the better my patterns are for you. And so we're helping each other. All right. So thank you so much for being here. Happy knitting. If you're in the New York area, be sure to come to Brooklyn General on Sunday and see me, or ask your local yarn shop about having me come visit, or at least sending a trunk show of patterns and samples. I'm always happy to do that and to share my work. And I hope you love it, and I hope to see you soon. So thanks so much and happy knitting. Mwah! Bye.